Is this all your stuff?
No, I borrowed it from health department. I'll start out with the emotional discussion meeting minutes.
Just chime in. No, I forgot. Second behind it.
When the
Alzheimer's kicking in.
that's just when
Supposed to come in the same room.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started this afternoon or this evening. My name is Jeff Norval. I'm chair of the Worth County Zoning Commission, and seated around me are the other members of the Zoning Commission and our Worth County Zoning Administrator acting commission. I'll just have everybody introduce themselves real quick, their names, starting on my left over here with Matt.
I'm Matt Dubay, the zoning administrator.
Todd Rocco.
Dana Thomas.
Justin Faber. David Quisley.
All right, thank you. Since this is an official meeting of the Zoning Commission, we must first officially begin our meeting, then we'll open it for public comment. I also want to advise you that this meeting is being broadcast via Zoom for people to listen in and it is being recorded. So with that, we'll get started with our meeting. We have determined we have a quorum, all members are present. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, but we need to remove the redundancy of Justin Faber being in attendance last week.
Okay, all commission members have seen the minutes from last week and saw the redundant entry for Justin. Is there a second to approve the minutes with that adjustment?
I'll second it.
All those in favor of approving minutes from last week, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried, the minutes are approved. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, or I'm sorry, the agenda for this evening, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried, the agenda is approved. I'll now seek a motion to open the meeting. Well, actually, let me give some comments here, just some rules of the road, if you will. Our purpose tonight is to hear your comments on the draft ordinance related to commercial wind development. We want to hear your comments and concerns and suggested changes to the draft. After we hear these comments, and we're also receiving written comments, the commission will consider those comments to determine what changes we feel are necessary to the draft. After completion of that work and vote by the commission, we'll provide a report of our activities and recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. If they choose to move forward with an ordinance, they will determine the content. They may take our recommendation as written, or they may make their own changes, or they may write something entirely different. It's their prerogative. Regardless of the content they choose, they'll have a required reading and public comment as required by state law prior to passage. So there will be additional opportunities for your review and comment of that ordinance prior to passage. The draft that the zoning commission proposes will simply be our recommendation to the supervisors. As I said, we want to hear from everyone present tonight, specific to the contents of the draft or what you think may be missing, and so we'll ask you to focus on that. Broad discussions or things not related to the draft really aren't desired tonight because we need to get through what is the content. The commission will consider all comments presented, and if you want to leave things in writing with us, that's welcome too. Now, to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak in a timely manner, the commission discussed last week and decided on an initial 3-minute time limit per person. That doesn't mean that's all you'll get, however. We'll keep the meeting open for as long as it's necessary to allow everyone to have their say in a timely manner. Free to come back to the microphone again after others have had a chance to talk. We have a timer running, so you'll hear when the 3 minutes are up. If we find that 3 minutes is not sufficient and it's shutting everybody down, the commission reserves the right to change that time limit to 5 minutes. Again, please try to keep your comments specific to the draft. We need to know what you feel needs to be changed and why, and what you believe should be removed or added. The commission members may have questions on what you're saying, but we'll try to let you finish before we ask. Our questions and your response will not be part of your allotted time to speak. And again, you can speak multiple times after others have had a chance. I should also note that if you have questions for us, you can ask questions as well, again, related to the draft. We ask that each person that wants to speak do so at the microphone. There's a microphone at the table in front of us here. You'll have to the first person just turn it on. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, begin by introducing yourself by first and last name and where you live. If you're speaking on behalf of a group or business entity, please identify that as well. I would also ask that everyone respect the time and opinions of everyone else. We want this to be as fair and equitable as possible, so please refrain from interrupting others or engaging in conversation while others are speaking. I would also expect that no one would verbally attack what someone else may say. You may disagree and say so, but please keep your comments professional and not personal. This is an emotional topic for many people, but we want to discuss things objectively. That said, I'll take a motion to open our meeting for public comment.
I move to open the meeting to public comment.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the meeting is now open for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to provide comment to the zoning commission regarding our proposed draft? There's a microphone at the table up front here. Just click the switch up.
Hello, my name is Bruce Bartness. I'm from actually Winnebago County, but very interested in your meeting and what you guys are going to do for your ordinances here. I'm curious, my question is, I'm curious why on the, let's see, it was page 1 and setbacks, section 1, number 1, table 1. The, in regard to the eagle's nest setback, I have a letter here from the DNR, and what they say about setback for active eagle's nest is 5 mile all around this active eagle's nest, and I don't actually have the map of active ones in Worth County, but I know there are. But your table says 1,600 feet or greater than 1,600 feet or 3.7 times the total height. Now that only gets to be like 1,875 feet if it's a 500-foot tower. But the DNR clearly says a buffered zone of 5 miles. I just wonder how you come up with that same amount.
Yeah, that is something that the commission discussed. We did see that recommendation from the DNR of a 5-mile buffer zone for eagles. Really, it came down to the question of, are there other ways that we can manage and mitigate any kind of damage to eagles or the taking of eagles? We inserted language regarding a incidental take permit that would need to be issued by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, as well as a habitat management plan if a wind turbine were within that 5-mile buffer zone. As far as our county ordinance was concerned with regard to setback, we felt that 5 miles of a setback buffer was excessive, and we essentially decided to make that setback equal to the setback that we were providing to the residents of the county.
Thank you.
My name is Colleen Waller. We live on a family farm. We've had in his family since 1858. It's located between the State Line Cemetery and Ochiohola. It has a section of the Shell Rock River going through it. There's also an article about the incidental take. They may remove that under the Biden administration. On that. But anyway, I want to look at page 9, the significant bodies of water half mile. I would really prefer that to be set to a mile because of the habitat along the river, the fact that there's bats and other animals that live along our farm. But it talks about in the DNR that there's a lowlands that has a significant fog or low cloud banks, and in 12 years of driving to Forest City, I would often encounter fog along that low-lying area of the river back of the Payne Burns and where the river goes through the back of our farm. And so this may be a habitat area for bats. And I know they live at my house all the time, and we have old growth. And that brings me to the next section, page 10, woodland. I would also like you to consider changing that to a 20-acre parcel of woods. Not everybody has a huge farm. Not everybody can have 40 acres of woods. I tried to draw it all out. It looks like I'm close to 33, and even all that isn't put together in one section. So we have a lot of habitat, but I wish you would consider changing that down to a smaller, like 20 acres. The final consideration that I wanted to bring up is page 10, city limits. One of the things that you've got there is 1,600 feet. And I apologize if we've discussed this because I can't find the city limit boundaries. But we're trying to grow Worth County, and we need more housing if we're going to grow Worth County. We need affordable housing. We need starter homes. We need retirement homes. And there was some talk when I went to the meeting about the courthouse, about the locations of where you can place a subdivision. And generally that's on the outside of a town, not on the city limits. And so I just want you to consider that we might need a little bit further back so that cities do have a place to enlarge and grow and place a subdivision. And if you've got a 1,600-foot setback from a city boundary, you're stifling development along our towns that we're trying so hard to grow. So I would just like to ask you to consider those changes. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the work you do, and I appreciate especially that you volunteered, even though you got some hassle on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Angela Wright, and I live in Heartland Township. I totally agree with the consensus that was sent out through concerned citizens. And a couple of things that I want to touch base on is the perimeter, the setbacks. I would really like to see 2,000 feet. The reason for that is when we sat here and listened to engineer, that's what they told us. They told us that would be 2,000 feet, and it should be from property lines. I work social services. I've worked social services for over 24 years. I work that from my home. I need to be able to use all of my land in which I do to do my social services activities with my clients. Those are goals that are set through the state and through me. So that 2,000 feet should stay from the property line. A couple other reasons why I believe that, and I would like to see the noise be put down to 30 dBs during the nighttime, especially. And the air light ALS system put in for the flashing lights. Part of this is because I've raised 26 foster children in my home. Almost every single one of them had a sensory disorder. 1 in 6 children have a sensory processing disorder. That means the fact that all those things heighten the senses, and our home is the only place where we can control that. We can't control it when we go out. We can't control it anywhere else. We can only control it in our home. And when you add turbines and you add flashing lights and you add the extra noise, we can't teach our children how to process that so that they can become adults. Not only that, but it would also affect people with post-traumatic stress disorder, which is 1 in 10 have post-traumatic stress disorder, and 2/3 of those are military veterans and first responders. ADHD, 1 in 10. Autism, 1 in 5 children these days have autism. For that reason, I would really like for you to consider those. Another thing that I did notice when I was reading it is the definitions. The definition of commercial wind energy, I think should have conversion system put into that, not just a turbine. And I do believe that we need better definitions for non-participating landowner and participating landowner. The way that it sits right now, participating landowner owns a turbine. They're not ones that have a hangover agreement or good neighbor agreement or anything like that. It also does not separate out somebody who may be a participating landowner on one piece of land, but choose not to be a participating landowner on another piece of land. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one question for you. You said that Invenergy had said originally that they were going to do a 2,000-foot setback. Do you have that, is that documented somewhere? Did they provide something in writing where they said that?
Yes, so there is a slide, and I have sent the slide to Supervisor Wilbur. I can send it to you guys.
Okay, so, but it was that slide deck that their sales guy used? Okay, thank you.
I'm Teresa George Zenz, and I wasn't planning on talking, I just got here. I just found out about this stuff, and I'm a business owner in town, I'm on the city council, and I'm a chamber president. And I just found out about this, we should have a 2-mile buffer around the city of Northwood. You know, like they were saying that we're having kind of housing developments there and stuff, so if that wind turbine is so close to town, who's gonna wanna live right by the house, build a brand new house? So, anyway, I wasn't planning on saying anything, but then I listened to this stuff and I wanted to explain my piece, and that's really all I have to say. But I really don't know anything about this at all, but a 2-mile buffer, what I've been told we should have. I don't know how to go about that. If it goes to what you guys do, it's recommended to supervisors, we have to do something, I have no idea. So, I don't know what to do.
But just to be clear, what your comment is, your recommendation is that there would be a 2-mile buffer of no windmills around city limits in the county?
Yes. Yeah.
My name is Andrew Bowman. I am from Lincoln Township. I am one of those veterans that suffers with PTSD. Does it incapacitate you? No, it does not, but it does affect my sleep, affects my falling sleep, getting good REM sleep. I think my biggest issue is I don't need another factor in my backyard helping me to stay awake. I pretty much got that figured out. So I'd like to see the buffer pushed back maybe to 2,000 feet. I don't even know if that's gonna help. I sort of did a little bit of research on the internet myself. A lot of that information is so vague, there's not a lot of research behind it. I don't know if any of you sitting up here could tell me what's the recommended, distance that would not affect that for me. I don't think any of us can tell me what that is. And then also it's, not only the noise pollution, but it's also pollution to the landscape. I understand farmers need to have the extra income, and I get that. But maybe I just don't want to do that. Thank you for that.
One question for you. You talked about your recommendation would be for 2,000 feet setback because of the impacts of the turbine. The way that the commission has viewed this is that sound is one thing and it can be managed. But shadow flicker is a separate thing and it can be managed. And setbacks are really for safety considerations. The impacts that you're describing that lead you to recommend a 2,000 foot setback, are they sound or shadow or what's your
Maybe
rationale?
sound, which it can all be adjusted, assuming by their computers. But who's coming out of my place to say what the sound is when it is?
So you're concerned.
I can hear a dog bark a mile across the section. So,
So
in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so your concern is predominantly from a sound
Sound, that's my
perspective.
sleep, yeah.
Okay, so sound being, if we can separate sound and manage sound, whatever is necessary to manage sound to a particular level, if setback is a part of that equation, then there's a setback component. But the key is what we're trying to do is find ways to manage the individual impacts. And so I just wanted to make certain that we understood your comment.
Distance affects sound. Correct.
Yeah, but there are other things that we can do for sound as well.
Yes.
But the key is your comment is we need to manage the sound so that it's not disruptive. Is that accurate?
It's accurate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Which side of the table is saying, my name is Ken Estes. My wife, Connie, and I are from residents of Wood County. To use a census statement with a group of probably 20 some of us have worked on it the last few weeks. And I know that, as we said at the very beginning, this will be a very motivating for people and probably all the continuum here tonight. So I'd be remiss in not stating that during our meetings, never did one person make a comment that would indicate any disrespect for the rights of the landowner to put up a turbine or to participate in wind farm development. That was never talked about. But it was very evident early on in our meetings that we shared a lot of common beliefs and values. And one of the primary beliefs that our group aspired for was that Wood County should be a great place for everyone to live. Everyone in anybody. It should be a great place to live, to work, to raise our children, to enjoy our homes, and to enjoy all those things that all of us value, and why we live in small town rural. So, seeing all that, we also talked about how much we value our friends and neighbors. And when we would hear stories of what some are experiencing because of the placement of the children so close to their home, it was heartbreaking. So, in all of our discussions, we concluded at the very end that we're hopeful that whatever regulations are created, that they're pro-health. And that those regulations are designed to protect their safety, their health, their well-being, and their quality of life. So our group then tried to come up with a sustained way of expressing our concerns and recommendations, things that we affirm in terms of the work that your committee has done, and we thank you for that. We also thank you for the opportunity to be here to express our opinions. But there were 5 points that we wanted to expand on: setbacks, sound, shadow figure, lighting, approved kind of lighting, and decommission. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, and she can share some of our statements.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I live in Union Township. And,
Julie?
I'm part of the consensus calendar.
Excuse me, Julie.
Oh, I'm
Comments
sorry.
are to the commission.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Is it okay if I sit?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm part of the consensus calling group, and there were a group of 25 of us that met twice. And as Ken said, we worked on a number of things. So this all came about when the Planning and Zoning Commission was directed to get this draft together. So at the end of the workshop, the participants formulated a consensus draft regarding section 1, siting and design standards. The group's consensus is the setback requirement for adjacent property lines should be amended to the greater of 2,000 feet or 4.5 times the total height or manufacturer safety distance. We base this on the rationale for setback regarding safety. First, we offer information from the wind industry itself. It's all about safety, as it should be. This is a slide from Nordex. Nordex is a company that manufactures industrial wind turbines. Nordex, in their safety manual, instructs employees that during storm events, they should stay approximately 1 kilometer, which is 3,280 feet from a wind turbine. Stay in their vehicle during that time for a period of 1 hour. Also in the same slide, it addresses fire. And it says that during fire, they should stay back a total of 500 meters, and that's for 1,640 feet. As Ken mentioned, this is a pro-health approach. To prevent adverse health effects, you can find a number of, a great deal in the literature recommending varying distances, even from 1/2 to 2.5 miles. 1.25 miles is commonly recommended. And I refer to the excellent revered testimony from Dr. Stephanie Stevens that you met with, or from our own Worth County, Dr. Benjamin Johnson, cardiologist from the Iowa Heart Center. I would also refer you to authors Punch and James, who have an often cited review of the literature that bases the quote industry standard. The industry standard is not based on scientific data. Indeed, it should be the burden of the wind industry to prove safety for all aspects of health, not just physical safety. So one question I had is, are you going to allow, since this is a group statement, or can someone else that we represent over 100 people, will you allow an additional time?
Well, the rules that we had published to everybody at the beginning was each speaker would be provided with 3 minutes for the initial comments. And then we allow other people to come up and comment.
Okay?
Once others have commented, if you want to come back and continue, that's fine.
Well, it's hard to do a presentation when it's like that. Is anyone allowed to give me their 3 minutes?
If there's another person that wants to speak and they provide their 3 minutes to you, I suppose, I look to the commission.
I got a lot of minutes. And that is something that is done in the state legislature, I know, and at the previous public hearing, it was allowed.
Okay, you can speak on behalf of
I'll speak
somebody.
On behalf of Brent. Okay, Brent? Okay, so what you're seeing here is a slide that you were speaking of before. This is a slide that was shown actually in this very room in June of 2019 when Invenergy gave a PowerPoint presentation to prospective participants. It was here in this building and on that very wall, and where the minimum residential setback of 2,000 feet was posted, and I do have the entire PowerPoint. Some people here tonight have spoken about DNR. We do realize that it is understood that while the DNR has no regulatory capacity, the agency does review and make recommendations in order to avoid wildlife and other natural resource conflicts. We support, the support of these DNR guidelines is strongly urged. We do recommend recommendations given to increase the setback from the Iowa DNR recognized eagle's nest. And here indeed, a very current April 2021 eagle's nest in Worth County, those will be the blue dots that you see there. We do recommend that if you should decide to increase the eagle's nest or the property, non-participating property owners, that you do the same for the eagles, okay? Next, ADLF, that has been talked about here. That stands for Aircraft Detection Lighting System. We do recommend, the consensus of the focus group is that we recommend implementation of ADLF as a requirement in Worth County wind installation. This is a radar activated obstruction lighting system so that the blinking lights turn on or off based on the presence or not of aircraft in the vicinity. The blinking lights are seen for many miles. I'm sure none of you, most of you have seen this. And I don't think I'm going to get it to run, but anyway, some are subjected to more than one development, resulting in a layering effect of unsyncopated blinking lights. The Federal Aviation Administration has addressed the increasing problem of nighttime flashing lights, termed it light pollution nuisance. Use of ADLS allows for lights out 98% of the time. I would say that North Dakota has passed legislation in 2017 requiring lighting mitigation. Notably, this applies not only to new builds, but also retroactively applies to all existing wind developments. With that, I would like to turn it over to Matt Helgeson. Thank you. No, we won't go.
Okay, as Julie said, I'm Matt Helgeson, I live on the county line, north of Lake Mills. Over the past 2 years, I've researched this issue, read medical papers, understood what folks are faced with around this country, met some who have abandoned their homes locally, talked to zoning administrators, acousticians, and public officials who have established proper regulations to gain insight on how to do this. My main interest here is sound and how it is affected, how it affects people. I'm highly motivated and advocated for protection in our region of the sound limits. This past winter, I sent a petition to Winnebago County Supervisors advocating for stronger regulations in my township of Norway, Winnebago County. In the footprint of this worthwhile project, 82% of the local homeowners supported regulation. We're not a vocal minority. I'm here in part to represent all those folks in my county as well, but the outcomes of this meeting today really affects both counties. Regarding sound, it's a complicated issue, as you all may have found out through this process. I tried to consult several acousticians and had success with an acoustician named Stephen Ambrose. He's a board certified in noise control engineering at the Institute of Noise Control. He's an emeritus of acoustics, environmental sound, and industrial noise, and his career he spent providing guidance to power plants and industrial wind regarding sound. So I'm relaying his comments today, which were also supported by zoning expert Kevin Ortiz, who I spoke with several times, acoustician Rob Rand, who I also consulted with. I consulted just yesterday and this week with Iowa cardiologist Ben Johnson on the issue, who's also submitted his own comments to you. So I'll focus on section K. This is the most critical section to protect the residents from annoyance and adverse health effects we heard from Dr. Seaman. The regulations for non-participating residences are strong and appropriate, and commend you for that. The 45 dBA LMAX in the day and 40 dBA LMAX at night would allow for acceptable noise limits for homes and residences. For added clarity, you do need to add descriptors of LMAX fast in paragraph 1B. Wherever you see the instance of dBA and dBc numbers, you need to add those descriptors. I want to say that you must not waiver or change this descriptive LMAX specific unit of measure. Go to the next slide. LMAX is simply the highest value measured by the sound meter over a given period of time. The wind industry, I've seen argue that LMAX is a peak, and that peak noises should be disregarded as they may become something like a car passing or a firecracker. Does anybody want to add 3 minutes? Thanks. LMAX is not the same as a peak.
What's the name of your person you're speaking for now?
LMAX is not the same as peak, and they're different. Peak measures have no time constraint applied, time constant applied. LMAX is typically the noise that these people complain about. It's the loudest noise that occurs at times such as the evening, when the atmosphere sees a temp conversion. When the wind speeds at ground level decrease and the speeds aloft remain high, is often when the noise becomes much more obnoxious and annoying to residents. This is often the same time that people are using their outdoor spaces. A local from southern Minnesota told me today, who had abandoned his home, said you should have come over in the winter when the noise is twice as loud. So I'm just giving inference to this issue that it's not about a daytime average. There are certain points of the day that are obviously much more problematic. You are absolutely correct by establishing these sound limits at the property line, and it allows non-participants full use of their property now and in the future. And I have submitted in writing additional comments about ambient noise, recommendations for that, and testing for compliance via email. So we have the opportunity here to establish sound regulations that are compatible for all residents living in this county. Go to the next slide. As I said, I spent 2 years on this. I've met a lot of people and discovered how widespread this problem is of noise and the problem that people experience in their own homes. This photo is my friend Terry Marsh's son. You can't see it very well, but he's wearing earmuffs. He put these earmuffs on after a very loud and long night in their Missouri home surrounded by wind turbines in which are being proposed here in this area. This is incompatible. The noise limits established are participating property owners. So those that sign easements or sign waivers are weak. Stephen Ambrose told me that the only recourse for some of these participating residents may be eventual home abandonment. A right to sign a waiver or a right to sign an easement does not make it safe. A noise limit that is incompatible with building turbines here is irrelevant to this conversation. This is about the health, safety, and welfare of the people. And I must recommend, therefore, that the sound levels be established for all people and not only just the non-participants. I just wanted to mention briefly about shadow flicker. You have 0-hour shadow flicker route for non-participating property owners. The consensus is that we fully support that. And so, for those who are unfamiliar, shadow flicker is what happens when the turbine passes between the sun and the home. And the noise or the light flickers into the house and around the property.
The last section was on discontinuance, decommissioning, and the only thing on there is that we ask consideration that the security be in place before project construction as opposed to project completion.
All right, thank you. I have a question for you, Matt. I want to make certain that I understood you correctly with regard to sound and participating and non-participating landowners. Your suggestion to have no waiver for sound?
He's always been when he was vice president.
Second,
About his mental capacity, which is just painful to watch sometimes.
my recommendation that you make.
The ordinance currently has sound limits for participating landowners, and our definition of participating landowners in a general sense would be those landowners that have a turbine on their property. Non-participating landowners would be other landowners adjacent to that property. And they have sound limits. So we have sound limits for both, but you're suggesting that that not be allowed to be waived?
Yes, my point is that if the sound restrictions are set for safety, that the same folks who are non-participants should be allowed the same safety standards as those who do have turbines.
Right, and we have those standards there, but we allow the sound limits as well as setbacks and shadow. As currently written, section 1.4 describes waivers, and setback, sound, and flicker could each be waived.
It's my opinion that the judgment of a landowner may not fully understand what that waiver means.
Okay, understand.
Final thing? Thank you very much for the extra time, and I just want to thank you all very, very much. I did watch all of your meetings that you had, and I just couldn't believe it, Justin, when I looked and here you were in the tractor. It was pretty cool. Thank you.
Well, just to wrap up.
I'm sorry, you've had your time. You can come back again.
That's fine. That's fine.
My name is Jake Logan. I live in Martin County. Most of you guys, first off, thanks for what you do. I know you guys are volunteering. So I emailed out a research paper that I did a few days ago. I don't know if you printed it off and presented it to the board yet. But
No, we're collecting all that stuff now and then we'll distribute it to
I guess I
the.
just wanted to bring it up. It's about weather and Doppler radar and wind turbines. And so I have a 7-page research paper. It's based on peer-reviewed bibliography. It shows examples of wind turbines as small as 250 feet tall, wind turbines in the numbers of 36, creating blips on Doppler radar. It effectively masks weather radar. So tornadoes, there's a case of a tornado lasting 20 minutes without being seen on the radar. So I think that needs to be brought up. I have my recommendation. My recommendation is it doesn't look like we have any setback distances for wind farms and current Doppler radar terminals. So my recommendation would be that I get my recommendation from the National Weather Service. They're recommending 37 miles from the nearest Doppler radar terminal. We have two. We have one in Forest City and we have one in St. Ansgar. 22 miles, the National Weather Service recommends major mitigations so that we can actually have weather predictions. That's all I have. One more thing. Anybody wants to copy this?
I'm just gonna turn up the microphone a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Crystal Ash, I live on Lark Avenue, well, 2 miles now. I live on Lark Avenue in Danville Township, with my husband Steve and 2 young children. First of all, echoing what Julie and Ken said, we'd like to thank the Planning and Zoning Board, for all your time, hard work you put into getting this ordinance together. Your efforts are appreciated, certainly, this is volunteer, you're away from your family and children, things you want to do, so, thank you. My husband and I have lived on our acreage since 2008. We love the peace and serenity of our rural living, and that's why we moved there. We enjoy sitting outside on a calm evening, listening to the birds sing, watching our children play. We put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into our home and acreage, like I'm sure about everyone in this room has. We have no plans of ever moving. Hopefully one day, one of our children will want to live there. So with that being said, we would appreciate the protection of the ordinance for our rural homeowners to protect our health, our safety, and our welfare, like we kind of talked about earlier. By implementing the reasonable and carefully thought out setbacks and noise level standards that we mentioned in the amendment to the wind ordinance draft, by the supporting statements they had from both the doctors and the data that Matt shared. So me and my husband thoroughly support the amendments to the wind ordinance draft that were presented in the consensus statement. In closing, I would like to recognize that all landowners have rights, whether you are for or against having a wind turbine on or near your property. However, one landowner's rights should not encroach on another landowner's rights to live their lives in peace and harmony. And that is why we need a wind ordinance with strong and defined setbacks. Again, I would like to thank you for your time and respectfully listening to my comments as last night. So thank you.
Just an administrative note, mostly for the zoning commissioners.
Can you repeat your name, please?
Crystal Latch, Lark Avenue, Danville Township.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's been mention of the consensus statement. So for the public and the commissioners as well, we did receive an email this afternoon that was titled consensus statement. It was a document that went through various sections of the draft, providing recommended changes. And it was titled as a consensus statement, but because it included a variety of persons' names that was attached to it, such that it was derived by a group. So I just wanted to let everybody know what this consensus statement was that is being referred to. Because I know the rest of the zoning commissioners haven't seen it yet. We just got it via email this afternoon.
Yeah, my name is Elliot Evans. I live in Bristol Township, ranked by all the turbines and joys. I'm just glad the sheriff is standing back there. I want less of a setback, because I live where all the turbines at, and everybody I know there loves them. And they did a big study, a 2-year study on the curves, all this stuff. I don't know if the wind has changed in 20 years, that all this stuff came about. But I guess my recommendation, less of a setback, or especially if you own the land, and I worked hard to buy the land, now you tell me I can't get a turbine, so that's mine. And then the lights, the blinking lights, I guess nobody went travel in a big city, there's just oodles of lights there, so I don't understand the light issue. And the land value, I bought land with wind turbines on it, and that price went up with the wind turbines on it, because of the gas flow. And I know the county's broke, and the county needs money, so the revenue would just be great for the county. And I do know what a lien waiver is. So that's my statements.
Your comment on the waiver was what?
He didn't think we knew what a waiver was. He said a lot of landowners don't know what a waiver is. And I know what a waiver is.
Oh, the fact that the setbacks and the sound.
Right, I like to have a waiver stated in
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. One other administrative note for everybody, I neglected to say in my opening comments. We are trying to keep tabs on who the speakers are, so please make sure, I don't know if Matt can give a little nod that he's got your name, but I also want to remind everybody, there is an attendance sheet on the table near the front door, so if you could please just sign it as well, so we know who all was attended here.
Travis Meyer, I live in Barton Township, right below the Barton Wind Farm. I guess my biggest issue, we should have setbacks from people's houses where they live. I can see that. But why are we having setbacks from fence row, property line? If we're gonna start having setbacks with windmills, we're gonna have that setback from lot face. You know, what about grain beds or trees? Somebody's gonna plant a tree on the other side of the fence, it's casting a shadow on the ground. We're gonna have to set those trees back. We're gonna set back green beds. We're gonna have to set back all kinds of structures. Recently, a guy built a shed on the property line, of which he got a little bit messed up, and actually built it on the property, but, you know, that noise coming from the shed. Where are we gonna stop with this? You know, we start with windmills, we're gonna put a lot more stuff in here. It shouldn't be from a property line and setbacks, it should be from houses.
Were you just making a comment that we should change it, or were you asking a question?
I'm just saying, if you're gonna start setting back from property lines and windmill, you're gonna have to start setting everything back. You have to set your corn back, your corn casts a shadow on the ground, you know? Where's it gonna stop?
I talk pretty loud, I don't know if I use a microphone or not. All right. If it's all right, with the commission, I'm going
You have to turn it on.
Is that better?
Well, I'm gonna come here, the minutes, from, Linda Logan and Robin Hopperstead as well. I am Sue Logan, and my family lives on farms in Heartland Township. I would like to thank the Worth County Planning and Zoning Commission for the hours of work and research that's been done into the development of this wind ordinance. The Worth County Board of Supervisors have listened to the citizens over the last few months. They repealed the ordinance 1812-3, established a moratorium on industrial wind, and tasked the Planning and Zoning Commission to develop a wind ordinance that protects the citizens who work, live, and play in the county. Others tonight will talk about sound and setbacks. I would like to discuss the comprehensive development plan of Worth County. The comprehensive development plan was established to give guidance for future development. The plan is to encourage and support the development and expansion of industry within the county that doesn't cause a nuisance or interfere with the existing quality of life for surrounding neighbors and property owners. Quality of life is a repeating theme throughout the comprehensive development plan. And although the commission has addressed health and safety in the ordinance, I do not believe that quality of life has been adequately included in the draft. Over the past few months, I have spoken with residents in the Freeborn Wind Farm who have experienced unrelenting sounds similar to an airplane continuously flying overhead. Some residents have sleep disturbances, flicker effect on their homes, and headaches. One described the infrasound as so intense that she thought she should go to the basement in fear of a tornado being nearby. I have heard of residents
who are considering moving out of their longtime homes to escape the devastating impacts of the wind turbines. These comments have come from homeowners who have turbines farther than 1,600 feet from their property line. Big Wind does not want to see regulations that protect the residents of Worth County. They are only concerned about making their project work. The fact is, if a landowner does not have enough property to provide a safety distance of 1,600 feet around the turbine, then the landowner does not have enough property to host a turbine. The draft ordinance allows for waivers. Neighbors who are unconcerned with the 1,600-foot distance are welcome to allow shorter distance setbacks or higher sound limits if they so choose. The draft regulations do not make a wind farm impossible. However, it does make the landowners and the wind company who profit from the turbine to work together with those who must live among them.
And I'm sorry, so who is the next person that's going to give their time to?
Linda Logan.
Your name, please? Right, go ahead.
In the Big Wind easement agreement, the landowner agrees to allow wind turbine operations, including electromagnetic, audio, visual, light, vibration, wake, radio interference, flicker, view, noise, air turbulence, electrical, shadow, and all other effects attributed to wind turbines. This does not even address the health impacts of living on or near a wind farm. Each and every one of these items contributes to a diminished quality of life. A landowner may choose to accept these turbine operations, but they do not have the right to impose such issues on their neighbors. Also impacting the quality of life is the loss of home value for residents living in or even near a wind farm. An objective review was conducted by the Forensic Appraisal Group. According to their research, an overwhelming majority of realtors say that wind turbines negatively impact property values. They estimate the range of impact to be from 10% price reduction to being completely unsellable. I would like to address page 4 of the draft ordinance, purpose and intent, number 3. This ordinance is to be in accordance with the Worth County Comprehensive Development Plan. That includes protection of individual property rights, natural resources, fragile ecosystems, and threatened and endangered species. The Commission has not followed the minimum guidelines set by the DNR. There is no reason the Commission should deviate from the DNR recommendations in this ordinance. I know that the Commission has surmised that the DNR minimum recommendations were followed. If the minimum recommendations were followed, there would be large zones in the county that would not be eligible for wind turbines. It is not the Commission's role to try to ensure that a wind turbine can be placed anywhere in the county. It is the Commission's role to determine locations based on the guidance of the Comprehensive Development Plan of Worth County. On page 55 of the plan, there's a map with the county's natural resources areas highlighted in green. The majority of these resources are in the northwest portion of the county. This is the very region that a wind developer currently wants to establish a wind farm. A permit in this area of the county would be in direct contrast to the Comprehensive Development Plan of Worth County. The draft ordinance does not adequately reflect the intent of the plan or take DNR recommendations into consideration. DNR recommendations should not be ignored just because they are limiting for a particular project. If the project cannot follow the DNR recommendations, then the location is not right for the project. Our regulations should not conform to a project. The project needs to be able to exist within the limitations established. Robin Hopperstead.
If a wind company cannot operate within the established guidelines of the ordinance, then one, the location is not right for a wind farm, or two, the wind company is not right for Worth County. Finally, are we required to have a turbine on every farm in the county? Do we value the viewscape of Worth County? With over 300 turbines already in existence, there are very few areas in the county that do not currently have a turbine in the viewscape. Have we already met our threshold of wind turbines? How many turbines is too many turbines in Worth County? These are questions the Planning and Zoning Commission have yet to address.
Thank you.
A question for you, Sue. Your last comment was, your last comment was related to total number and how many is the appropriate number. Are you recommending that there would be a maximum number? Is that your suggestion?
I certainly would hope so. I certainly would hope that our county would say, this is the threshold for the number of turbines we can have in our county.
What would be the method and rationale for developing that?
I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I don't know what that method or rationale would be. But there has to be something. There has to be something that says we've got enough.
Right, thank you.
Is this on?
Flip the switch up.
On? I'm Braylon Stinger. I live in Deer Creek, and I farm there. For you people fighting, more power to it. I've got 8 of them around me. It's not only living there, it's affecting my cattle. I sold cattle the other day. I lost 200 pounds on my steers. That's money out of my pocket. My cows don't want to go out. I got 8 of them around me. And I hear you saying on your Zoom, by the way, I'm representing just myself. Talk to your neighbors. I did. They come to my place 6, 7 times. I didn't think it was enough money to jeopardize my good farm. Our house actually shakes at night when the thing's running. Any of you are more than welcome to come out and have iced tea or anything at my place in Elizabeth. They shut them down today by me because of this meeting. I know it is. Yes, I've been in contact with them. Talk to them steady. And they turn the things off and say it's less noise. I call them again. And they come out and look at it. What I'm asking you guys is how about an ordinance for us in Deer Creek? There's other ones out there that can be here arguing like I am right now. And why isn't some Deer Creek people or other people on the board instead of just a handful of certain area? We need somebody. Yes, I did talk to my neighbor. I heard you say that at one of your meetings. By the way, that was a poor Zoom, near half of it. And I apologize for this frog in my throat. But I'm here representing myself in my cattle production. Who's gonna pay my taxes? Who's gonna feed me? Those guys are trying to offer me money. Ain't enough money. I talked to all my neighbors, 2 of them would not put them beside me. One's to the north, which you are hooked to, did. It's over 80 rods, or over a quarter of a mile. That thing I'm hearing over the cattle and everything else in the bullshit. That's the one shakes my house. There's another one down the road, about 120 rods. That one's close to a half a mile. Another one down from my other thing, half a mile. It's bothering my cattle. That's terrible about the people. But what about my livelihood? You don't hear anything about the cattle man. And I can prove the cattle thing on my own deal. I mean, this isn't doing me any good, I know it isn't. But consider us. And watch how you vote. I think we need it all for the whole county. And I'm not a strong supporter of zoning. But stuff like this, and your neighbors go against your wishes and put it right tight to me, then the war is on. We need zoning and we need it now. Protect these poor people ain't got it. But try to get something in it for us. And I thank you.
Just as a matter of clarity, the draft, the ordinance that we're discussing is a county-wide ordinance related specifically to commercial wind development. It would apply to all of the townships. It's not a zoning ordinance. We're not addressing the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance, as it stands in North County right now, is limited to the 3 townships along the interstate, Heartland, Danville, and Brookfield. This is a separate ordinance, independent of that zoning ordinance. So it would apply to all of the townships as it's currently drafted.
How's it affect us in Deer Creek then?
Well, it would apply to Deer Creek for any future, let's presume that the draft as written were passed by the Board of Supervisors, because that's what has to happen. So if the Board of Supervisors were to pass the draft as written, then it would apply to all of the townships in the county, including Deer Creek. Now, it only applies to new wind projects that would be coming in. It wouldn't have anything to do or any impact on the Freeborn project.
Well, they really should. You shouldn't be afraid of them. If Minnesota and their XL Energy, which who was ahead of it at the beginning, because the salesman named Buck come into my yard, which was to my place before my neighbors, by the way, and when they're walking.
But the Freeborn towers are already in. The zoning commission wouldn't have, it's not within our purview.
Anything can be repealed. You look at the Malstead Act, the biggest well-known one, the drinking one.
That would have
But
to
I'm
be.
not gonna argue with you, but I thank you for giving me a chance to talk, okay? You're welcome to come out to my place anytime and listen to them. Just don't let them know they shut them down. Thank you.
I'm Shelley Lynch. And I would just like to say thank you for attempting and trying to get something in place to protect us. We were not protected. We are about 1,500 feet, give or take. It's nothing, hasn't been surveyed, but it is so loud. And I believe, and people giggled when Rayleigh said that they turned them off, but they do turn them off. After I posted the noise from our place, for 2 weeks, it was pretty quiet. So they do listen and they do turn them off. And it is true as to what Sue said, that it is like, I feel like I'm living at MSP with the jets taken off constantly. Maybe they can control the sound, it would be one thing, but it depends on where you're at on our farm. The sound bounces off of the buildings. We have some to the north, some to the west, and then of course to the southwest of us. I think 2,000 feet is not unrealistic. Either that or you have to do something with the sound. But we've lived there 40 years and you never, I mean, this is permanent. It's never gonna go away, ever. And never. It's like when someone dies, they're never coming back. You know? And never is just a really strong word, but it's never gonna be the same then. And so I just would really like you to consider the consensus and the other things that people have said about
Does anybody go? Oh, yeah.
My name is John Adams of Ringwood County. What I've heard tonight is really good. Really good.
Can you bring the microphone up a little closer, please? Can you bring your microphone up a little closer, please? We can't hear
Good
you.
about living in Worth County for what I've heard tonight. A lot of good reasons why that demonstration or maybe. This one gentleman over here talked about.
Excuse me, John.
From his point of view, and I appreciate that. Money makes the world go around. And I do too. Let me tell you, we get the ordinance that we want, but for the supervisor to approve it, it's money. We'll hear about tax revenue to the county that these women and these provide. We're not talking about night, we're talking about safety. Money is safety. So think about the money. If you're gonna talk to your supervisor, that's the point that he'll perk his ears up to. It's all money. And I look, we're not a poor county. Not by any stretch of the imagination. If we are, your money wants us to pay. We gotta know. We don't need any more. And we're gonna get more, we'll do it a better way. Not another casino, but some other way. Yeah, that's all.
Nolan Bart, Spartan Township, Wood County, former Wood County Supervisor. First of all, thank you for your service. Having served in government, appointed and elected for close to 30 years, there are occasions when it's not very pleasant. And there are occasions when you make a tough decision, whether I agree with that decision or not. I respect the decision that is made with due diligence. I've spent some time looking at the ordinance. There we go. I'll do that. I apologize. I spent some time looking at the ordinance, and as a former legislator, there's always that decision: do you attempt to improve something that you disagree with, or do you just let it stand? I've always felt that good government means that you at least give a diligent attempt to improve something. And so my comments are going to be specific to trying to actually improve it. Portions where I think you may be doing something that you're not intending to do. So the detail is in the definitions, as you probably figured out. As I used to be told many times in the legislature, words mean things, words mean something. So specifically, I'd like to look at two definitions. The first one I'd like to look at is, of course, the commercial wind energy conversion system, or as you're referring to it, the CWAC. I've read it and I've tried to be a devil's advocate in reading it, trying to figure it out. There's a couple things that I think are extremely important. Within the definition, you cite an energy corporation and you cite a commercial entity. You give no definition of a energy corporation, and you give no definition of a commercial entity. So the first place I would go, frankly, poke holes in your ordinance is that definition itself. For instance, if I was a not-for-profit, would this be applicable? If I was a private citizen, would this be applicable? And you see where I'm going. There could be a multitude of questions asked as to how you get around the ordinance if you indeed want to get around the ordinance. The second thing is something that really kind of bugs me about this more than anything else. This is a case, and I'm not thinking of you now, but I think once I say it, you're going to realize it. This is a case of the commission saying, do as I say, not as I do. You know, this ordinance is not applicable to the city. It's not applicable to the county. It's not applicable to a state agency. So if the city of Northwood wanted to build turbines all the way around within a 2-mile distance, they could. If Worth County wanted to build a turbine, it worked out conservation, would someone please give me 3 minutes? Thank you very much. What's your name? Barb Evans is giving me 3 minutes. Thank you very much, Barb. If Worth County Conservation wanted to put a turbine on one of their properties, if a school district wanted to put a turbine on their properties, I understand Northwood at one time did. I don't know if it would have met the definition of 100 kilowatts or 125 feet. But once again, the key is your definition. So you may wish to take a look at that. And for sure, I guess as a former county supervisor, at least make it applicable to the county. The second definition, I think, is important, and we've talked a lot, there's some individuals who talk about private property rights. Look at public conservation areas, and specifically in the very end of public conservation areas, there is the wording, other privately owned lands upon the permanent conservation easements that are granted to public agencies or not-for-profit conservation organizations. For 5.5 years, I was NRCS Regional Assistant Chief in Washington, D.C. There's all kinds of permanent easements. I'll mention 2 very quickly that some folks might be familiar with. Wetland Reserve Program, in most cases, is a permanent easement. Emergency Watershed Program, in many cases, is a permanent easement. Why would you wish to prohibit, and through this ordinance, a turbine on property that is actually regulated by another agency? So for instance, you could have a private property owner who meets every other requirement in this ordinance, but they happen to have their acres in the Wetland Reserve Program, and they want a turbine. You basically told them, no, the way I read the public conservation area, because if it would be setting on private property that happens to have a permanent easement, you basically would say that person cannot even be a participating landlord. The third thing is the question that I don't think has been addressed yet, although Grayling got actually relatively close to it. Does this ordinance address repowering of existing turbines? I haven't found anything. Or is it applicable to repowering? Which in case not only would you have the 300 turbines would therefore be regulated if it's applicable to them. And when that lifespan of those turbines come up, the ordinance would be applicable, which would mean that they would have to be, they could not be repowered. I think that that's something that needs to, maybe you can answer that question for me, or at least it's something that the commission should consider.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you've raised a number of questions that I'll address. I just wanted to let you get through your comments. Sure. I'll get those.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so not in any particular order. No, you can stay there because we may have a little bit of a dialogue here. So let me just say, first of all, a great deal, in fact, I would say a vast majority of the language that's in the ordinance was copied from ordinances that are in place elsewhere in Iowa. We reviewed about 38 counties across all regions of Iowa, found 34 ordinances that were either standalone wind ordinances or ordinance language inside their zoning that dealt with commercial wind. And we virtually copied the vast majority of what we have here from those ordinances, including the definition specific to the CWEX definition and public conservation areas. That came, if I recall correctly, I'd have to go back and look at the notes, but it was a Iowa code that had some of that definition. It was not intended by the commission that would apply to CRP land. So we'll make certain that clarity is added in there. So that, with regard to the source of the definitions, the CWEX, I've made notes that we need to define energy corporation. We'll revisit that whole definition at large, but we will also define energy corporation and commercial entity. The other question you asked was regarding repowering. There is a section in the ordinance. Let me look at the table of contents real quick. So it's on page 28. It talks about operational upgrades to install CWAS. And it essentially says that if it's more than just a software upgrade, if it has to deal with putting a larger nacelle on it or larger blades, things of that nature, that would be considered a new project and would go through the permitting process.
Thank you very much for the clarification. I would, in that case, I would strongly speak against that particular position. As has been mentioned, once again, whether you agree or disagree, this county currently has approximately 300 turbines. I think if you add the 76 to the 229 that we're dealing with county before. Now, those 229 is $172 million of property tax base and is about 17% of the budget of Worth County per year. If you would shut down, many of those turbines are reaching their lifespan and will need to be repowered and will need to have new agreements, done with landowners. If you would shut down those 300 turbines, I'll guarantee you this county would be hurting big time financially. At a minimum, I would recommend that you protect the turbines that are here.
Yeah, this doesn't say that they can't be upgraded. It says that they would need to go through the permitting process. Because it's effectively a new turbine. If it's not replacing with like size, then it would be a new turbine and it would go through the permitting process.
So clarification, going through the permitting process versus the ordinance restrictions applicable. You're saying they would have to go through the permitting process, but these ordinance requirements would not be applicable, or these ordinance requirements would be applicable?
Would be applicable.
Okay, so definitely there will be turbines that could not be repowered.
Okay, so you're suggesting
Based upon the fact, particularly with the first farms in Worth County, a lot of those turbines, if you drive up that way, a lot of them are much closer together. The 40 acre, the 1,600 feet from a non-participating landowner would basically probably completely wipe us out.
Unless they got a waiver.
Unless they got a waiver, yes, sir. Thank you.
Justin, are we allowed to ask questions to the center or no?
No, it's public comment to the zoning commission.
This is kind of a follow-up with Merlin about definitions. You have conservation areas and you have recreation areas. There's different setbacks for each category. And I guess I was the director for the County Conservation Board for 35 years here, so I've noticed that the public has a kind of a different opinion of the way some of these words get used. The wildlife management area is almost always in Iowa a public hunting area, which you put under the recreation area. So my recommendation would be to either strike the public hunting period in that recreation area, or if you want to use the term public hunting area and move it up and put it in right behind the wildlife management area.
So you're describing in the public conservation area, the definition includes wildlife management area, and you're suggesting that the wildlife management area is not appropriate as part
No,
of
that's
the public
appropriate.
conservation.
It's the next one down, the recreation area, you've got just the public hunting. And I get, from a professional standpoint, almost all our wildlife areas, management areas are public hunting.
Okay, so you're saying there's a redundancy between the term public hunting land and wildlife management areas?
I would say that because you've got a 1 mile setback on one and a half mile on the other, but you're talking about the same type of ground.
Right, so it gets back to,
So I.
you're saying public hunting land and wildlife management areas are one and the same thing.
Yes.
I see, okay. Any other commenters? Anybody want to go round two? Or just a question? Go ahead.
I have a question and a comment. So my first comment is page 11. It was concerning 3H signal interference. And I apologize because I skimmed that. It was the best practices from the wind industry side. But it specifically said you need to be careful about signals. And I don't know if they're still broadcasting internet from Northwood or not. And I know many years ago out at Joyce, they complained about TV signals, which could be affected. But I would like you to look at page 17 and add the Worth County Sheriff for communications as a person that needs to be contacted, because I do know they need a tower and those communications need to be checked. But the best practices for the wind turbine industry said they can check it. And as long as the radio signals and that are under the blades, the turbines, there should be no interference. So it's just add the sheriff there, if you would, because we want his communications to be good.
Understand.
Okay, and I would like a clarification on that repower that Merlin was talking about. I was a little bit confused. I read that section, and if they are maintaining the same height and the same blades and are just repowering the nacelle and not changing the footprint, would that need a new permit process, or could you make it clarified for us?
Yeah, so I'll quote from the draft right now. So it first of all talks about, well, I'll just read it. Any upgrades to installed CWACs that require more than a software upgrade shall be considered a new project and be subject to a new CWAC permit and shall follow all aspects of this ordinance. Exempt from the proceeding are upgrades to internal components of substations or turbines which may occur as a matter of routine operation, maintenance, or repair, and which does not materially change the structural aspects or size of the turbine, its components, or substations. So essentially, if all they're doing is changing out the guts and putting on a new set of blades that are not materially different in size, then it doesn't need a permit. It's just a routine, it's an upgrade.
Thank you very much.
Under section 7, discontinuance and decommissioning, one thing I would suggest, and is it on? Yeah.
No.
Okay, under discontinuance, page 29, I think it is. And I get a lot of this from talking to people that do tiling, especially over in Mitchell County. Taking in everything down to a depth of 48 inches, I would suggest that be 72 inches here in Iowa, where tiling is so important. And then I have a question, and I maybe missed it when I was watching your meetings. Permits. Did I miss it in here? Do they have to pay a permitting fee? That's in there? Is that $1,000?
Yes, there is a permit fee in there.
Okay. So I would just say, considering the amount that they,
I guess if they do not pay taxes, add a 0 on that and maybe we're there. Thank you, bye.
What is the order to cost us?
Sorry, somebody wants,
What is the ordinance going to cost us?
I don't understand just the ordinance. So the creation of the ordinance, the only, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. So the creation of the ordinance itself, as far as the work from the zoning commission, is probably gonna cost, I'm guessing, and it's purely a guess, $100, $120. The only cost is to pay travel expenses for the zoning commission. We're not paid. We're just political, we're appointees from the board of supervisors. The only pay that we receive is if we have to travel someplace in order to carry out zoning commission business, then we're paid travel expenses, whatever it is, 50, 55 cents a mile. So that would be the cost of our creation of the report that we will provide to the board of supervisors, along with our recommendations. The board of supervisors, their cost is fixed. Whatever business they conduct is part of the fees that they're getting. So I don't think that the ordinance itself has a cost. Now, if you're asking what is the economic impact cost of the ordinance, I don't think anybody here is prepared to say. We simply don't know. We've not gotten any feedback yet from Invenergy. We sent a copy of the draft to Invenergy the day after the zoning commission approved it for public comment. But as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we still haven't got their comments yet. So we don't know if there would be a potential economic impact in the county if the board of supervisors were to pass it. But I don't know if that satisfactorily answered your question, but that's all that we know of right now.
So I just had a quick question. Section 1, 3K4 talks about once complaint, once investigated. Can you kind of tell us what that's about, especially, or how that process would work?
I'm sorry, what was that page or?
Section 1, number 3K4 is what I have written down. So it's noise complaints, once investigated, the person who made complaints will reimburse the escrow.
Oh, just a moment, let me want to make certain I got that spot for you. So you're talking about issue resolution on
Yes.
page 26?
Yes, and how that would work if the turbine companies can change the noise level from a computer.
So are you asking about issue resolution at large or specific to noise complaints?
Section 1, 3K4, I found that just right in that section. I think it's that large, but I could be wrong. I don't have the ordinance in front of me.
Could you step up here and point to me where you're talking about? I'm not following your section reference.
Unless I have the wrong ordinance. Operation. Okay, well, I must have the wrong one. So the issue resolution, sorry. 2A. Well, it would be the B. About reimbursing the.
Okay. I know what
Okay.
you're referring to.
Sorry, I had the wrong one.
Okay, so what I believe you were referring to is there's a earlier clause in the ordinance that would require the wind turbine company to put up a $25,000 escrow for adjudication of noise complaints. And that if there were a noise complaint that were submitted, that escrow would be used to fund a third-party sound test, that third party approved by the supervisors and not associated with the energy company. And they would perform the test to determine whether or not the turbine was compliant with the sound components of the ordinance. And that if the turbine were found not compliant, that the wind turbine company would reimburse that escrow back up to $25,000 and fund that testing. If the turbine were found to be compliant, then whoever submitted the complaint would be required to pay for to pay back, if you will, the cost of the sound testing, so that the wind turbine company was not funding something that was ultimately found compliant. We felt that that was an equitable way to address it and prevent nuisance complaints against the energy companies.
Okay, so my question is, so with the third party, is there a way of testing that turbine without them lowering it? Because we have heard from in there that they can lower the sound of it. So that third party, they are able to test it to make sure that was the correct sound. Is that
Yeah,
what
so
I'm understanding? Okay.
part of the noise complaint also requires that the operational digital data, the operation of the turbine, that digital data that the wind company uses, that's provided as part of that process, so that the sound tester would know if they were manipulating the turbine to beyond what they would normally do.
Since I see I've got the time, I want to make a couple more specific comments regarding section K. These are comments from the acoustician consultant, specifically the definition around, I guess, in fact, the definition around ambient noise. It's very important addition would be to use the definition or the descriptor for background sound level pressure to be L90. You'll see those comments specifically in the concession statement provided. And Chris, do you have any questions on that? And
You said the detail of that is in the comments that was submitted as part of that concurring statement?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a question for you in section K1, paragraph D. You have a DE measure at night. Sorry, a day of 60 DEC. And then the graph, it says at night is also 60 DEC. Is that the intentional replication of that number, or was it intended for it to be 55?
I can only speak to what it says right now. I'd have to go back and look at the notes and conversations. But your suggestion is that the nighttime DBC level is an error?
It seems that way, and that is what was apparent to the decision. That it be 55, so that the DEA and DBC are parallel decreases in range. I mentioned that there was comment about paragraph 3 regarding ambient noise. For Stephen Ambrose, the maximum noise levels are protected. Sorry. The maximum noise levels are protected in a quiet environment.
on section. Okay, because the ambient noise levels in L90 will be below the limits set forth in section 1A B, we do not need to be concerned about ambient sound levels. He suggested a total strike in that paragraph. And instead an assertion that says the Worth County is a rural area of ambient sound levels less than 40 dBA at night. Sorry, 40 dBA a day and 30 dBA at nighttime using metric L90. Therefore, we not need to be concerned about ambient noise levels. I'm sure you will take this question from me if you have it, that you're not fully understand. I get. And the positions from his experience in the noise regulating industry, that the applicant is responsible for showing compliance after production of the facility.
So your recommendation is that the ordinance would require the energy company to show compliance after installation?
Correct. In some way, which, again, I would reference this advice on how to do that, or how to word that properly.
I concur with that last statement you just made. I like that. A sound study, I wonder how much that's going to cost. $25,000 sufficient? I do not know.
Any other commenters?
One more I've been trying to keep up on some of the issues that were mentioned tonight. One speaker mentioned the Worth County moratorium, which currently in effect in regard to winter construction. And I know when Worth County passed that moratorium, Supervisors Wilbur and Supervisor Stone were quoted in a Globe Gazette article saying that moratorium is not applicable to the Worthwhile project because they had already started construction. I'm sorry, I don't know the date of that Globe Gazette article, but the reporter did report that. So the question is, given that mindset, if this ordinance was adopted, the way it reads right now, is it applicable to the current Worthwhile project which is under construction?
I believe at that meeting, Invenergy said that they are not even in design stage yet, that they did not expect to go into design stage until June at the earliest, probably more likely July is the comment that I heard. They also stated they had not yet finalized all of the agreements that they were seeking, nor had they identified even what turbines they would install. They made the comment that they were not prepared to talk to the county at all yet on any details of their project. They did say that they had installed the bases, concrete bases for 2 turbines in Silver Lake. And they said that they did so for tax purposes to get for federal tax purposes to claim start of the project in 2020. Given that the ordinance would require that each turbine location be permitted, which is consistent with what would happen today in the zoned townships, according to the zoning ordinance, each turbine site would need to get a conditional use permit. So given that each turbine is required to have a permit, The only two turbines that would have been technically started would be the two that have the bases dug in at Silver Lake. And so the ordinance would apply to the balance of the turbines in that project.
Thank you.
I am Mark Brown. Also, I am here on behalf of the work following project of Infinity. I did just want to follow up with that. I didn't plan to say anything tonight. I'm going to come here just to observe. That I did want to clarify since the topic got brought up. It is the position of the work following project of any ordinance that would be proposed would not be applicable to our project. We did start this in 2018 and been developing the project for about 3 years now. Have started construction at the end of 2020 on a handful of permits, with the county, a lot of battles, things of that nature. And we had nearly 30,000 acres of participating property for our project. So I just wanted to make it clear that that is the position of our project. That it does have those vested rights and will not be subject to any sort of future approval.
Yeah, and I understand there's assertions on the part of Invenergy, and there's questions around it. The reality is, it's not a question that we're going to be able to solve tonight. Nor frankly, do I think it's a question that is going to be solved by members of the zoning commission or even Mark. It's going to be above our pay grade, as they say, whether it's applicable or not.
Definitely above mine, but I think it's one that.
Yeah, we understand. Yeah, and Invenergy is on record multiple occasions stating that you believe that the ordinance would not be applicable.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Other commenters or second rounds? Okay, I guess I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
I second.
All those in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Public comment part of the meeting is over. I want to thank everybody for attending, particularly the folks brave enough to get up and speak. If you have things you want to leave with us in writing, you're welcome to do so. And also, please make sure you record your attendance on your attendance sheet out by the door. Thank you very much. Right? Yes. Yes.
Sorry, you didn't ask me that.
No, that's all right.
Quickly, and then- Oh, we just did that.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Justin just did a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Okay, so the motion on the table is to adjourn the zoning commission meeting. All those in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Zoning commission meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Copy of your